The flames licked hungrily at the night sky, painting Clara's pale face in shades of amber and gold. As she watched everything she owned turn to ash, her modest cabin, the one her late father had built with his own calloused hands, crackled and hissed as the fire consumed 23 years of memories. The townspeople of Copper Ridge stood in a semicircle behind her, their faces hard as the desert stone, their silence more cutting than any words they might have spoken. "Should have minded your own business, Clara," muttered Sheriff Hawkins, spitting tobacco juice into the dirt. "Apache boy or not, some lines ain't meant to be crossed. Month asterisk, 3 days, earlier, asterisk. The sun hung mercilessly overhead, as Clara Mackenzie made her way back from the general store, her worn leather boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. The heat shimmered off the main street of Copper Ridge like a living thing, distorting the distant mountains into wavering mirages. She adjusted her sun-bleached bonnet and quickened her pace, eager to escape the oppressive afternoon heat. It was then she heard it, a sound so faint she almost missed it beneath the drone of cicadas and the distant lowing of cattle. A whimper, soft, desperate, barely human. Clara paused, her hand instinctively moving to shade her eyes as she scanned the scrubland beyond the town's edge. There, beneath the sparse shade of a dying mesquite tree, lay a small figure. Her heart clenched as she realized what she was seeing. A child, no more than 6 or 7 years old, curled in the fetal position, with the sun beating down mercilessly on his small frame. Without hesitation, Clara dropped her parcels and ran toward the boy. As she drew closer, her breath caught in her throat. The child was Apache, his dark hair braided with small feathers and beads, his bronze skin marked with the distinctive tattoos of his people. But what broke her heart was the state he was in, dehydrated, sunburned and clearly abandoned. "Oh, sweet child," she whispered, kneeling beside him and gently touching his fevered forehead. His eyes fluttered open, deep brown like pools of earth after rain, and for a moment fear flickered across his young features. "Shh," Clara soothed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I won't hurt you, you're safe now." The boy tried to speak, but only a raspy croak emerged from his parched throat. Clara's maternal instincts, dormant since her own childhood dreams of family had been buried with her fiancé at Gettysburg, surged to life. She gathered the child in her arms, surprised by how light he felt, and carried him toward her cabin. As she walked through town, heads turned and conversations stopped mid-sentence. The stairs followed her like physical weight, pressing down on her shoulders with each step. She held the boy closer, protective and defiant. "Clara Mackenzie, what in the name of all that's holy do you think you're doing?" Mrs. Patterson's shrill voice cut through the afternoon air like a rusty blade. "Taking care of a child who needs help," Clara replied without breaking stride, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. "That's no child, that's a savage." Mr. Henderson, the blacksmith, stepped into her path, his massive frame blocking the sun. "You bring that thing into town, and you'll have every Apache warrior from here to the Chiricahuas coming for revenge." "He's a little boy," Clara said firmly, meeting Henderson's glare without flinching. "A little boy who was left to die in the desert. If you have a problem with common human decency, that says more about you than it does about me." The crowd that had gathered murmured among themselves, the sound like angry bees. Clara pushed past Henderson and continued toward her cabin, her jaw set with determination that reminded anyone who knew her of her late father, a man who had never backed down from what he believed was right. For 3 days Clara nursed the boy back to health. She discovered his name was Ayana, which he whispered meant eternal blossom in his language. He spoke a mixture of Apache and broken English, having apparently lived on the edges of both worlds. As his strength returned, so did his stories, fragmented tales of a raid that had separated him from his family, of wandering alone for days before collapsing, where Clara had found him. Clara found herself enchanted by the boy's gentle spirit and quick mind. He helped her tend her small garden, his knowledge of desert plants proving invaluable. He showed her which cacti bore the sweetest fruit, and how to find water even in the driest ground. In return, she taught him to read simple English words, and shared stories of her own past, of her father who had built their cabin with dreams of prosperity, of her lost love, who had promised to return from the war but never did. On the 3rd evening, As they sat on her porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Ayanna looked up at her with those deep, earnest eyes. "Why you help me, Clara, mother?" he asked, the endearment making her heart skip. "Because," she said, brushing a stray lock of dark hair from his forehead, "everyone deserves kindness. Everyone deserves love." It was the last peaceful moment she would know for a long time. The mob came at midnight. Clara woke to the sound of angry voices and the acrid smell of burning pitch. She rushed to her window and felt her blood turn to ice. Nearly 24 men stood in her yard, their faces masked by shadow and flame, torches held high like weapons of righteousness. "Send out the Apache brat, Clara," Sheriff Hawkins called out, his voice slurred with whiskey and hatred. "We know you got him in there." Clara's hand found Ayanna's shoulder as the boy appeared beside her, his eyes wide with terror, but his small jaw set with the same determination she had seen in warriors twice his age. "They want to hurt me," he whispered. "No," Clara said fiercely, pulling him close. "I won't let them." But even as she spoke the words, she knew the terrible truth. She was one woman against 24 men. She had no weapons, no allies, no hope of fighting them off. The only thing she had was her courage, and sometimes courage wasn't enough. "Clara Mackenzie," the sheriff's voice boomed across the night. "You got 10 seconds to send that boy out, or we're coming in after him. And if I refuse," Clara called back, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice, "then you'll burn with him." The finality of those words hit her like a physical blow. She looked down at Ayanna, who was trembling against her side, and made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "Listen to me carefully," she whispered urgently. "There's a loose board in the back wall of the root cellar. You can squeeze through it. Follow the creek north until you reach the sacred stones. You know, the ones your people use for ceremonies." Ayanna nodded, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Hide there until morning, then keep going north. Find your people." She pressed a small cloth bundle into his hands, bread, dried meat, and a silver locket that had belonged to her mother. "Remember that you are loved, Ayanna. Remember that someone fought for you. Come with me, Clara, mother," he pleaded. "I can't, little one. They'll follow us both, and we'll never make it. But you're fast and smart. You can survive this." The pounding on her front door grew louder, more insistent. "Clara," Hawkins roared, "time's up." She kissed Ayanna's forehead, tasting the salt of both their tears. "Go, now, and don't look back, no matter what you hear." The boy hesitated for one heartbreaking moment, then disappeared into the darkness of her cabin. Clara heard the soft scrape of the cellar door, and then silence. She opened her front door to face the mob. "Where is he?" Hawkins demanded, pushing past her into the cabin. "Gone," Clara said simply. The men tore through her home like animals, overturning furniture, smashing dishes, searching every corner and crevice. When they found nothing, their frustration turned to rage. "You helped him escape," Henderson growled, grabbing Clara by the shoulders. "You helped a savage get away to bring more of his kind down on us." "I helped a child," Clara replied, meeting his furious gaze without flinching. "If that makes me your enemy, so be it." What happened next unfolded with the terrible inevitability of a nightmare. The torches flew through her windows. The flames caught hold of her curtains, her furniture, her father's handmade shelves. Within minutes, her entire life was ablaze. Clara stood in her yard, watching 23 years of memories turn to smoke and ash. The men around her were already dispersing, their bloodlust satisfied by destruction. She was alone now, truly alone, with nothing but the clothes on her back, and the knowledge that she had saved one innocent life. For 2 weeks, Clara lived in the town's abandoned church, surviving on the grudging charity of the few townspeople who still possessed consciences. She took work where she could find it, washing clothes, tending gardens, cleaning the saloon after the nightly revelries. The pay was meager, the work backbreaking, but she endured it all with quiet dignity. She tried not to think about Ayanna, but his face haunted her dreams. Had he made it to safety? Had he found his people? Or had he perished alone in the desert, another victim of the hatred that seemed to poison everything it touched? The answer came on a Tuesday morning, as Clara was hanging laundry behind the church. She heard the sound of approaching horses, and looked up to see a sight that made her heart stop. 5 Apache warriors sat motionless on their painted ponies at the edge of town, their presence as sudden and startling as thunder on a clear day. They were magnificent and terrifying in equal measure, feathered lances held high, war paint streaking their faces, every line of their bodies speaking of coiled power and barely contained violence. The townspeople scattered like leaves before a storm, slamming doors and shuttering windows. Within moments, the main street of Copper Ridge was deserted, except for Clara, who stood frozen in the churchyard, a wet sheet clutched in her trembling hands. One of the warriors dismounted, a tall man with intricate scars covering his chest and arms, each mark telling a story of battles fought and honors won. He walked toward Clara with measured steps, his dark eyes never leaving her face. "You are the woman who saved the boy," he said, in accented but clear English. It wasn't a question. Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. The warrior studied her for a long moment, taking in her worn dress, her calloused hands, the quiet strength that radiated from her small frame. "I am Nalnish," he said finally. "Ayana is my brother's son, my nephew." "Is he?" Clara began, then stopped, afraid to finish the question. "He is safe. He is home." Nalnish took another step closer, and Clara could see the intelligence and compassion in his eyes. "He told us of your sacrifice, how you lost everything to save him." "He was just a child," Clara whispered. "Any decent person would have done the same." "No," Nalnish said firmly. "Most of your people would have left him to die. You chose differently. You chose to see him as human, not as enemy." Clara felt tears burning behind her eyes. "I couldn't do anything else. He reminded me." She paused, struggling with emotions she had kept buried for years. "He reminded me of the children I'll never have, the family I'll never know." Nalnish nodded slowly, understanding passing between them like a bridge built of shared pain and hope. "My people have a saying," he continued, his voice gentle now. "Blood is not always born from the womb. Sometimes it is chosen. Sometimes it is earned through sacrifice and love." He reached into a leather pouch at his side, and withdrew something that made Clara's breath catch, her mother's silver locket, the one she had given to Ayana. "He wanted you to have this back," Nalnish said, pressing the locket into her palm. "But he also wanted you to know that it will always connect you to him. To us." "I don't understand," Clara whispered. Nalnish smiled, then the expression, transforming his stern features into something almost boyish. "You saved one of ours, by our laws, by our traditions, that makes you family. You have become blood of the tribe." Clara stared at him in shock. "But I'm not Apache. I'm just a woman who did what seemed right." "That is exactly why you are one of us," Nalnish replied. "The boy you saved, he is not just my nephew. He is my heir. My brother died fighting the Blue Coats 2 winters ago. Ayana is the last of our direct bloodline. When you saved him, you saved our future." The words hit Clara like physical blows. She had saved not just one child, but the continuation of an entire family line. "There is more," Nalnish continued, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. "I have watched you these past days, seen how you carry yourself with dignity, despite your losses. Ayana speaks of your kindness, your strength. He calls you Clara mother, and says you have the heart of a warrior." "I'm not a warrior," Clara protested weakly. "You stood alone against a mob, to protect a child who was not your own," Nalnish countered. "You lost everything, and did not break. If that is not the heart of a warrior, I do not know what is." He paused, and Clara could see him gathering courage for whatever he was about to say. "My people are leaving this place," he said finally. "The soldiers come closer each day, and soon there will be no safe ground left. We go north, to Canada, where we might live in peace." He took a deep breath. "I ask you to come with us, to be Ayana's mother in truth, to be Ayana's mother in truth, to be..." He paused again, vulnerability flickering across his scarred features. "To be my wife, if you will have me." Clara felt the world tilt around her. Marriage, to an Apache warrior. The very suggestion should have been scandalous, impossible, unthinkable. But as she looked into Nalnish's eyes, she saw something she had never expected to see again. Genuine love, offered freely, and without condition. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I know enough," he replied softly. "I know you would die for a child who was not your own. I know you face hatred with dignity. I know you see people, as people, not as enemies or allies. These are the qualities that matter. Your people would never accept me, Clara said, grasping for practical objections to this impossible dream. Ayana has already told them your story. They call you she who saves children's, and speak of you with respect. Nalnish's smile was gentle now, encouraging. There will be challenges, yes, some will question, but love that is true finds a way to overcome all obstacles. Clara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of decision pressing down on her like the desert sun. Behind her lay Copper Ridge, a town that had turned its back on her, where she would always be known as the woman who chose an Apache child over her own people. Ahead lay the complete unknown, a new life, a new family, a love she had never dared to imagine. If I come with you, she said slowly, opening her eyes to meet his gaze, there will be no going back. I would be choosing your world over mine forever. Yes, Nalnish agreed simply. Just as you chose Ayana over the approval of your neighbors, just as you have always chosen love over fear. In that moment, Clara understood something profound about herself, and about love itself. All her life, she had been waiting for something, for her father's approval, for her fiancé's return, for the townspeople's acceptance. But true love wasn't about waiting, it was about choosing. It was about stepping forward into the unknown with nothing but faith and hope to guide you. When do we leave? She asked. Nalnish Dethed, the Sechuth. Wedding ceremony took place 3 days later, as the Apache band prepared for their journey north. It was unlike anything Clara had ever imagined. No church, no preacher, no white dress or formal vows. Instead, she and Nalnish stood before the tribal elders in a circle of ancient stones, their hands bound together with strips of buckskin, while the shaman spoke blessings in both Apache and broken English. Ayana stood beside them, his small hand resting on Clara's arm, his face radiant with joy. The boy who had been abandoned to die in the desert, now served as witness to a love that transcended every boundary his young life had known. As the sun set over the desert, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and crimson, Clara felt something she had never experienced before, a sense of absolute rightness, of being exactly where she belonged. The journey ahead would be difficult, perhaps dangerous. There would be hardships, cultural differences to navigate, prejudices to overcome on both sides. But as Nalnish's strong hand squeezed hers, and Ayana's arms wrapped around both their waists, Clara knew with absolute certainty that she had found her home, not in a place, but in the hearts of people who had chosen to love her, not despite her differences, but because of them. Minus a risk asterisk. Epilogue. 20 years later, asterisk asterisk. Clara Nalnish stood on the porch of her log cabin, watching her grandson, Ayana's son, chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. The reservation was quiet at this hour, filled with the peaceful sounds of families settling in for the night. Her hair was silver now, her hands weathered by 2 decades of frontier life, but her eyes still held the same fierce love that had driven her to save a dying child all those years ago. Beside her, Nalnish sat mending a bridle, his own hair streaked with gray, but his bearing still proud and strong. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly, not looking up from his work. It was a question he had asked many times over the years, usually on quiet evenings like this, when the weight of all they had given up seemed heaviest. Clara considered the question seriously, as she always did. She thought of the life she might have had in Copper Ridge, safe, conventional, approved of by society. She thought of the children she might have borne, if she had married within her own people, the easier path she might have walked. Then she looked at the man beside her, the warrior who had become her husband, her partner, her greatest love. She thought of Ayana, now a respected leader among their people, whose own children called her grandmother. She thought of the dozens of Apache children she had helped raise, teach, and heal over the years. She thought of the bridge she and Nalnish had built between 2 worlds, proving that love could indeed transcend every boundary. "Never," she said simply, reaching over to take his scarred hand in hers, not for a single moment. As if summoned by their conversation, Ayana appeared on the porch steps, now a man of 27 with children of his own. He settled beside them, just as he had as a child, seeking the comfort of their presence. "Tell us again about the night we met," he said, his voice carrying the same wonder it had held when he was 6 years old. Clara smiled, beginning the story she had told countless times but never tired of sharing. As she spoke, more family members gathered, Melnish's cousins, her adopted daughters, children, who had been born into their extended family of choice. They all listened with the reverence reserved for sacred stories, for tales that defined who they were and why they mattered. And in that moment, Clara understood the true meaning of the message she had learned so many years ago in the desert. Love doesn't recognize the boundaries others create. It doesn't see color or culture, tribe or nation. It sees only hearts calling to hearts, souls recognizing souls, and the profound truth that family is not always a matter of blood. Sometimes it is a matter of choice. The greatest love stories, she realized, are not about finding someone who fits into the world you know. They are about finding someone worth creating a new world with, someone worth crossing every boundary for, someone worth becoming a completely new version of yourself beside. As the stars emerged overhead, and the desert wind carried the sound of children's laughter across the reservation, Clara knew that she had found something more precious than all the gold in the California hills. She had found a love that truly transcended all boundaries, creating not just a marriage, but a bridge between worlds, proving that the human heart recognizes no limits when it comes to the courage to love. In the end, love is not about finding someone who shares your world. It is about finding someone worth sharing all worlds with, someone whose heart speaks the same language as yours, regardless of the words on their lips or the color of their skin. True love builds bridges where others see only walls, and creates family where others see only strangers.